Hello, everyone. You're listening to WRPI Troy, and of course, it's 8 p.m. So this is This Country's Saving Grace, the wonderful news program here from the students of the news department of WRPI Troy. We love to see it, folks. I want to start off by reminding everybody that this program is the opinions expressed during this program only represent the DJs and those within the station here, not the station itself, WRPI, or the board of trustees, the president of Troy, the president of WRPI, or the mayor of Troy, and all those things. All the opinions are
President of RPI.
Our own. Yes, exactly. All that stuff. So it's our opinions. There you go. So I'm going to pass it over to Elle here, and we're going to get right started on our topic of immigration today. So we love to see it, folks.
Yeah. So over the last few weeks since the beginning of the Trump presidency, there has been a crackdown on immigration across the country, not just illegal immigration, but also a lot of forms of legal immigration, and legal immigrants have been targeted. We have had students on study visas be deported for protesting. We have had and have their visas revoked. We have had immigrants extradited to Guantanamo Bay, and all manner of other offenses against immigrants and against, in my opinion, human nature. As part of this, the Young Democratic Socialists of America, our branch at RPI, has this past Sunday launched a petition to make RPI a sanctuary campus. As of today, we have collected more than 900 signatures, reaching more than 10% of the student body. And the administration released a statement earlier today in response to the petition.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Do you want me to read that, the response? Or should we get into the meat of what the petition was talking about?
Sure. We can get into the motivations behind that, why we chose to do this, why we think that it's important. So, like we said, it is absolutely true that this administration is targeting immigrants, both legal and illegal. And it is also undisputably true that this administration is specifically targeting campuses as a place that they see it, where they see that immigrants have hidden, where they see that immigrants have gotten around the system. Because of this, me and people that I know and people on campus, especially international students, especially immigrant students, have been worried about their immigration status, their ability to stay on campus, the chance that their study visa might be revoked. And that was really the impetus for this. We wanted to create something that would remind the students here that they are supported, that would assure them that RPI is doing all that it can to protect them within the bounds of law, obviously, but to do all that they can to protect them, to do all that they can to keep them on campus, to keep them RPI students, to allow them to finish their degree in peace.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think it might be a good point to read out the petition. So
Yeah, I got it here. I can read out the as it says. So it says, President Martin A. Schmidt, due to the drastic expansion of deportations and other federal hostilities towards immigrants in recent weeks, we now fear greatly for the continued well-being of international and resident immigrant students at RPI, where they make up nearly a fifth of our student body, as well as other threatened groups within the broader community. The current federal administration has already threatened to revoke student visas, putting our community at unprecedented risk. Thus, we are impelled to act. You have repeatedly affirmed your dedication to serving our underserved students. With this in mind, we, the undersigned students, staff, faculty, and community members of RPI, urge that you implement concrete, tangible policies to ensure that what you have said is not merely empty words. As such, we demand that you declare RPI a sanctuary campus. To this end, our demands follow. Assurance that RPI and RPI officials will not comply with Immigrations and Customs Enforcement (ICE) officials unless a proper judicial warrant has been issued and presented. The refusal of RPI Public Safety (DPS) to enforce immigration law or to cooperate with ICE officials. A guarantee that RPI will not gather or disseminate information about students' immigration status. For RPI to supply free, accessible, and confidential legal support to students with immigration law questions and issues by expanding the services of RPI International Services for Students and Scholars, ISSS, restraint with response to student demonstrations and activism, and assurance that the above is implemented on all property owned by, managed by, and or affiliated with RPI, including but not limited to the campus itself, dormitories, and any other properties that RPI is affiliated with. Any move in parallel with the current federal administration's immigration policies will shatter your commitment to the international and immigrant students of RPI. We must continue to foster a culture that attracts faculty and students from across the world, and we must retain the vulnerable faculty and students who rely on your administration to provide safety and support for their education. Accordingly, we we need practical policies that work in line with the values that your administration champions. Sincerely, RPI YDSA. And then a bunch of signatures from. Do you know the number of people that have signed it so far? There's a lot here.
Over 900 students, somewhere around 30 administrators, faculty, and staff.
Yeah, and they're all listed at the bottom of the form here, which is pretty crazy.
The administration did send out a response to this today, which, to be clear, this is only 2 days after the launch of the original petition that we gathered all of these signatures in, and about 2 hours ago, the administration sent out a response. If you'd like, that response is fairly long, but if you'd like, you can read parts of that here, and then I can talk about the YDSA's opinion on the response that we were given.
Sure. Gabe, do you have it up, the response? Do you want to read some stuff?
Sure. All right. So let's find some. I'll read the more important parts. So pretty much the response basically said, we're aware of the petition circulated by the RPI chapter of the Young Democratic Socialists of America, demanding that RPI become a sanctuary campus. As a private institution, we are restricted by law in providing information to law enforcement, and requests by law enforcement for educational records, absent an emergency, requires a waiver or subpoena. While our advocacy for and assistance to our students will not waver, we will continue to abide by federal law and will not adopt a designation that is not in the best interests of our students and our university. And they listed a bunch of facts. The RPI will comply with legally valid warrants, administrative and judicial, and subpoenas when properly issued and presented. RPI has legal obligations to obtain and retain immigration information regarding students who enroll here on student visas, as well as faculty and scholars at RPI on visas. We also have an obligation under FERPA to keep such information, which is part of students' educational records, confidential, and may disclose them only in circumstances defined by statutes and regulations, which include legally issued subpoenas. Unless ordered otherwise, RPI is required to notify a student, if possible, before releasing FERPA-protected information in response to a subpoena. And RPI has permitted and will continue to permit peaceful demonstrations in accordance with RPI policies, and that ISSS, the RPI's Office of International Services for Students and Scholars, can and does refer students to immigration-related legal resources when necessary. Some of these services, such as initial consultations, may be available at low cost or no cost to students. And they go on to say that they're monitoring the situation and will provide updates as they arise, and that RPI is committed to listen to all members of the community and to continue productive dialogue. And they say, and Marty goes on to say, RPI was founded for the application of science to the common purpose of life, and that we will be steadfast in that mission and our values as we move RPI forward into its third century.
Yeah, so that's the response from the administration so far, which I'll be entirely honest was way quicker than I would have expected any kind of response.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's just my thoughts on that. But what is the YDSA's opinion on the response from the administration so far?
Yeah. So before I answer, I would like to introduce, we have Will with us here. He's the political education chair of the Rensselaer branch of YDSA. Will, do you have something you'd like to say right now?
Yeah. So, for one thing, it has been found in a recent paper published by Kidder and Johnston in the Journal of College and University Law, Volume 50, Issue 1, right here, that they do advocate for the expansion of existing campus-based support services. The UC system has established many systems to protect undocumented students, on top of the fact that California itself is already a sanctuary state. One thing that they encourage strongly is the University of California Immigrant Legal Services Center, based in the UC Davis School of Law, and it provides free immigration legal services to students and their families. We believe that as was mentioned in the letter from the president, that the ISSS can and does refer students to immigration-related legal resources when necessary, and then following up to them being at low or no cost to students. We do believe that it would be in the best interest to these students and a rather proactive measure for RPI to support the legal funds necessary for these students and for their protection in staying in this country and continue going to the school.
Yeah. So I think that that is one of multiple ways that the administration's response, while I am happy to see it and happy to see that they're engaging with our petition, and while I am happy to see that the administration does seem to value our international and immigrant students, I think that is one of the ways in which their response falls short of addressing the issues that we address in our petition. We are glad that ISSS does direct people to the assistance that they need sometimes, but it would be even better if ISSS had immigration lawyers for students to talk to. It would be even better if ISSS, instead of being able to direct people, were able to say, okay, let's get you into a meeting next week with our lawyer, and we can talk about your specific situation without putting an additional financial burden on our international and immigrant students. This is, I think, indicative of a theme in this response, in this letter, which is that the things that they say are generally true, but they are also the status quo. And we know what the status quo is. We wrote our petition fully aware of what RPI's current policies were, what the status quo was. And we also believe that that status quo is not sufficient to meet the needs of our international and immigrant students in this time.
I mean, what I saw from the response was that I don't think anywhere did they say we are doing this. They said this is what has been happening. These are the important facts to consider, but nowhere did they say this is a change we're making.
Yeah, they have made no commit. That's because they have made no commitments to make a change. They have not said this is what we will do to reassure our students. They have not said this is what we will do to ensure that our students have what they need going forward. They have said we believe that what we are doing. Yeah, they have said that what we believe that what we are doing is sufficient. It is the opinion of the YDSA that that is not true. The most important, I mean, their first fact here is, I think, one of the most important things to look at. They talk about how RPI will comply with legally valid warrants and subpoenas when properly issued and presented. RPI, of course, has to comply with the law, the federal law.
Yeah.
We cannot, and we would never ask that RPI ignore federal law. We would never ask that RPI simply tell ICE officials that come with a proper judicial warrant they cannot step foot on campus, because that would not be proper to ask. However, there are two types of warrants that an ICE official can have when they enter campus or when they enter any other property. They can have a judicial warrant, which is a warrant that has been signed by a judge and authorizes them to enter non-public areas. But more commonly, ICE officials will come with an administrative warrant. An ICE official can issue themselves, immigration courts can issue to ICE officials an administrative warrant, but an administrative warrant is not signed by a judge. And because an administrative warrant is not signed by a judge, it does not authorize those officers to enter non-public areas without the consent of the institution. This is so that means if an ICE official were to come on campus with an administrative warrant, with not a judicial warrant, an administrative warrant looking for somebody, they could enter the Union, they could enter the Mueller Center, because those are public spaces, those are not locked, anybody can enter those. They could not enter dorms, they could not enter classrooms, they could not enter any of those places unless an ICE officer asks and was let in by the administration. That is one of the things that we wish to address with our petition, is the fact that as of right now, according to this email, it seems that RPI intends to comply with administrative warrants. But this would be a travesty if an ICE official were to be let onto RPI campus somewhere that they don't have the right to be on a warrant that does not allow them to be there, but a school official were to let them in somewhere and something came of that, that would be, RPI would be complicit in that. And that's one of the ways that we think that this response fails to address the actual issues that we have brought up in our petition.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely see that. They say the opposite. I mean,
One thing I would like to add is that the Penn State, they have released some protocols that universities should look at.
Jointly with Cornell.
Yeah, and their legal scholars on what they should do in regards to ICE. One thing mentioned is that institutions should develop a clear protocol for staff, faculty, and students on how to respond if an ICE officer asks for access to a non-public area. One thing that was left rather undescript from the response from the president is what RPI's plan is when ICE does arrive, where it seems like they are ready to fully comply with anything that they could come on for. And as was previously mentioned, administrative warrants can be written on the spot for whatever the agent wishes and does not grant access to private spaces less the administrator of the private space allows them to enter. We do want to know what the protocol is when an ICE agent arrives to the school, or many, with administrative warrants. It is the preference of us and those that have signed on to the petition that RPI turn back an administrative warrant and require a judicial warrant for the officer to enter campus private spaces.
Yeah, which again would include classrooms, buildings that require key cards to scan into, buildings that are dormitories or otherwise require key access. That's really what we're asking for, right? We want the administration to have a clear policy on what they will do if ICE shows up, and we want that policy to comply with the letter of the law and no further. We do not want RPI officials to be complicit in anything that ICE might do. We do not want RPI officials to be directly cooperating except in what they are required to do by the letter of the law.
yeah, I mean, it sounds like from the response that, like, basically what they said is that we're not going to tell ICE that you're here, but once ICE is on campus,
They can do whatever they want.
like,
Yeah.
that they don't have a plan, like you said. There's no response.
And that's exactly what we're worried about. We're worried that RPI, for fear of offending the presidential administration, for fear of somehow offending the federal government, will comply in advance. We're worried that they will do things that they think will reflect well on them with the government and the administration before they're actually made to do those things, before they are actually forced to do those things. And we think that this would be a travesty for RPI and for the international and immigrant students that we have on campus that rely on RPI to keep them safe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because you can't, like they say, this is the moment in time when we can all unite and support one another. And that's, you can't do that. You can't say that and also then comply when ICE officials are here, when they are not required to be. Like, you can't have both of those things exist at the same time. And, like, this is not, like, something that's like, oh, well, we're not going to ever worry about it. Like, I've been seeing, like, online, on Reddit and stuff, like, people are just like, yeah, there's ICE agents in, Colony and other areas around here. Just because, we live in New York State, it's, a blue state or whatever, does not mean that this is not an issue that, directly involves people directly around us and in this area as well. So this isn't just like, oh, this thing that'll never happen. Like, no, it's very possible because, yeah, there is a lot of international people that are here on campus. So, that would be something that people who don't like international people would, probably come here. So,
Yeah, and I mean, like, based on what you said, like, there's ICE agents in Colony and around. Like, I've already seen on Instagram a few people who have been posting about people. I think I saw a mother and child from Schenectady that were separated by ICE agents, that the mother was taken and the child was left behind. That, like, these things are already happening within, like, 15 minutes of us.
And
Exactly.
I want to make it clear that if that happens on RPI campus, if ICE comes into somebody's dorm or comes into a classroom and takes away a student and ICE did not have the was not and ICE was let onto campus by a school administrator on an administrative warrant, on a warrant or without a warrant. If they were let in without the school
Without
being
any sort of
forced to let them in,
pushback.
yeah, if they were let in without pushback, without the school being forced to let them in, that will be RPI will be complicit in that. If a student gets pulled out of their class and deported, RPI will be complicit in that. If the student is taken out of their dorm, RPI will be complicit in that, unless RPI ensures that they will follow the law to the extent of the law and no further, that they do not comply in advance with what they think the presidential administration will want them to do. And that's all that we're asking. We're not asking that RPI break federal law. We're not asking that public safety like force ICE agents out of buildings. Like we're just asking that they not comply with ICE more than the law requires them to.
Exactly, and I think that's a totally reasonable request, and something that, if Marty believes these things he's saying, like the first like 2 or 3 paragraphs that we did not read of the response are all about all this, we'll say, flowery language about inclusion and in cultivating a vibrant and supportive environment, but then says like, oh yeah, well, but if ICE is here, then like whatever, So you, like I said before, you can't say all that stuff and then not act the part as well. So.
Exactly. He talks about unity. He talks about bringing the RPI together. He talks about how we need to stand together. All of that is true. All of that is good. The things that he is saying in and around the policies that he's talking about are good and true, and I agree with them. But the issue is that they are just words.
Yeah.
They're just things that he's saying. They are not concrete policies. And when he talks about the actual policies, when he tells us what he actually intends for RPI to continue doing, those things are not sufficient to protect the people that need protection. Those things are not in line with the things that he says RPI's values are. And that's what concerns me the most about all of this.
Yeah. I agree with all of that, of course. I mean,
One thing, if I may add as a suggestion, is to look into the history of the sanctuary campus movement. This is a suggestion for RPI's administration, in that the University of Pennsylvania recognized in 2016, when there was similar rhetoric coming from the same administration's first term, they recognized that they needed to have a commitment to their undocumented students, to their international students. They identified that UPenn had always been a sanctuary and a safe place for students. I would say that RPI is a similar place. If you look at our faculty, if you look at our students, RPI is built on immigrants. It is a necessity for the function of the school, and I would encourage administration to contact whoever they know at University of Pennsylvania and figure out how they went about this process, because they have apparently not experienced many grand consequences as a result of doing such. It's just a matter of having some backbone to want to protect your students and your faculty more than a bottom line, in my own opinion. And we hope that RPI does care about its students enough to at least challenge authority figures and not be immediately complicit when they are doing unjust actions.
And that's another thing that I want to emphasize, right? Is that nothing that we're asking is new. Nothing that we're asking is unprecedented. Nothing that we're asking is anything that other universities in the country have not already done or are not already doing. University of Pennsylvania, Wesleyan University, Portland State, all of these places became sanctuary schools all the way back in 2016 or 2017. Now that the new administration is in charge, new schools are also starting to become sanctuary schools. Stanford Student Government just passed a resolution to push their administration to become a sanctuary school. Nothing that we are asking for is unprecedented. Nothing that we are asking for is outside of the question of what other schools have done and continue to do.
And also, like what you said, like all those schools, they're also private institutions. Like they're also
Yes.
private research institutions.
Yes.
Most of them are in the same exact situation as RPI. Like not exact, but very similar types of schools.
Yeah.
Many of them receive government contracts from the same sectors that RPI does.
Yeah. And I even at schools that don't identify themselves as sanctuary campuses, many of those schools have policies that have the same effect without the title. And even that would be a step above what we have here. Right? Because the policies are what matter here, right? It's not the title, it's not any of that. If you look at Yale, Yale is effectively a sanctuary campus in all but name, right? If you look at the University of California system, they have free immigration law services available to all of their students. We could do that. We could do that today. RPI could hire a lawyer, expand the ISSS. They could do that today. And that's all that we're asking. We're not asking for anything that has never been done before. We are asking for common sense measures to protect our international students, to protect our immigrant students, to protect our undocumented students. And we don't think that that is that exceptional of an ask.
Yeah, it's 8:30 right now, so I'll remind everybody that you're listening to WRPI Troy, and that I'll do a brief disclaimer here that everything that is being said and will be said is the opinions of those here in the room, the DJs that are on air right now, and do not represent RPI as a whole. Well, obviously, are the mayor of Troy, or the president of RPI, or the board of trustees. Yeah, so keep that in mind. What I'll ask now is this. I was thinking about this yesterday before they provided this response, but it still comes into play. What from the YDSA is like the next steps? Like, what is the goal of this petition, and like where we go from here? What would you like to see see happen with this?
We intend on continuing collecting signatures for the petition, which, by the way, if I may plug, the link to the petition is www.linktr.com/RPI sanctuary.
No.com.
No.com.
linktr.ee/RPI sanctuary.
They don't make those things easy.
You can also find it on your guys' Instagram, right? The
Yes.
RPI DSA
The
Instagram
RPI
page.
YDSA Instagram
YDSA,
page
yes.
will also have a link. If I had to think about next steps, the obvious next step, we are currently writing up our own response. We are not sure how we will end up disseminating that, but we are going to have a response, hopefully by tomorrow, where we can address the actual problems that we think that our petition addresses, and the ways that we think that their response falls short in addressing those. As well as that, we intend to keep doing what we've been doing. We intend to continue to gather signatures. We have 2 members who are at the Student Senate right now, giving our case in front of student government, in hopes that they will support our petition. We will continue to collect student signatures and faculty signatures and the signatures of administrators and staff. And we do intend eventually to open a dialogue with administration and to hash out this conversation, see what of our things they think are possible to implement and what are not, and fight as hard as we can to get these things implemented.
Gotcha. What's the goals of the people who are at the Student Senate right now? What are they trying to do?
I believe that currently the Student Senate was considering adding this as a matter that they would vote upon because of its having more than 10% of the student bodies sign on. Outside of that, that's happening concurrently, so I don't know what motion is going on with that project.
We have been told that there are 2 motions, both in support of the petition right now. We assume that the Student Senate, or we have been told that the Student Senate was at least considering signing it as a body, but that they have a proper system that needs to go through for that. Sorry. There is also, in the bylaws of the union, a referendum process where if a petition were to receive the signatures of more than 10% of the student body of Rensselaer, the union, if that petition is not rejected by a Senate vote, the union will have an immediate referendum on whether that petition should become union policy, or this would not be union policy. It would be the official. It would. I don't know what exactly it would be, but it would be probably the official stance of the union. If we can get that to happen, that would be wonderful.
Because there's a difference between union policy and RPI,
Yes.
like administration policy.
Yes.
Would it be possible that, like, if the union adopted this as their policy, they would be able to, like, not allow ICE agents into the union building and stuff like that? Or does that...
Unfortunately, the union building is a public space. It tends to be unlocked and open, and because of that, there is likely not much that they can do to prevent ICE from entering the building. They cannot themselves expand ISSS with legal services. They cannot themselves do most of the things that we're asking for. So I am assuming that this will have to end up going through the administration.
Well, but even though they cannot prevent ICE agents from entering, would the union be able to remove them? Like they can't prevent them from going in, but then...
I doubt it,
Okay.
but I don't know.
These are unprecedented times. Well, they are precedented.
Yeah,
It's just
2016, 2017.
it's now a newer way of going about it.
Mhm.
The semi-independence of the union makes it a difficult question to answer, at least for me, who has not looked into it that much. Our communications chair, Philip, would know more than I do, but he is not here right now. Yeah. One thing that I would like to talk about from the petition that the administration did not address at all in their response is our demand that public safety refuse to enforce immigration law or to cooperate with ICE officials. This is again something that has been done at campuses across the country. This does not require RPI to perform any action. All that this requires RPI to do is say, if ICE officials are here and they have their legal warrants and they're doing what they need to do, don't stop them, so long as they have all the legal warrants and everything. If they don't, obviously stop them. But if they have all the things that they need to legally do it, don't stop them, but also don't help them. We don't want public safety. We think that it would erode students' trust in public safety and in RPI as an institution if public safety were knocking on people's doors to get ICE officials in. If public safety were coming into classrooms and pulling out students to bring them to ICE officials. If public safety were doing these things, I honestly cannot think of something that would be worse optics for RPI than having RPI campus police going into classrooms, having RPI campus police going into dorm rooms to pull out immigrants and bring them to ICE.
Yeah, because they could say ICE comes with a non-judicial warrant, like one of the administrative warrants, or even without that either, they could, and DPS was complying with them, they could just go and find someone in their dorm, because, they have access, I believe, everywhere. So they could, have DPS act as a function of them to have access to any building and all kinds of stuff like that, which would be, as you said, the optics are bad. It just, that's bad all around.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but as far as I know, like, DPS has no ties to any state or federal government. It is a independent, like, organization of RPI.
It's a private organization, but they do work with local police and local law enforcement when students have done something wrong and they need to be... all that we're asking is that they don't work with ICE in that same capacity.
Yeah, our argument stems around the fact that, similar to the argumentation behind sanctuary cities, that if there is a crime that is committed on campus by an international student, by an immigrant, then that should be a matter between the Department of Public Safety and the Troy PD. We do not need, federal forces arriving on campus to butt into this process. It should not be necessary. It is rather draconian and a bit of a scary prospect. The reason to go towards the move of a sanctuary campus is ideally to be proactive on these measures rather than reactive. It's very easy to sit by and do nothing, but we don't want to someday have to read the email to campus on how we are sorry to inform you that 200 or so fellow students have now been disappeared from campus. Having the status of a sanctuary campus should ideally thwart off um, the gall of ICE to arrive with administrative warrants in the first place, thus making it a harder process for them because they would have to go get warrants from a judge. Um, so we would rather RPI take action now instead of after. Um, it's very worrying to think about worst case scenarios, so that's why it's best to have policies in place to prevent them.
Yeah. Our biggest fear is that RPI will do nothing except keep their status quo policies, and something will happen. A student will, if we're talking about DPS in cooperating with ICE officials, what might happen would be a student does something student does something, DPS reports that to immigration enforcement, despite it being a non-immigration related thing because the student is an immigrant, and then ICE were to come on campus and take that student. That is our worst fear, and we would rather the administration address that before it happens than have it happen and go, oh no, we messed up, now we got to fix this.
Because at that point there's a student that's already been
deported, that's already been
there's no way to know what would happen until it happens.
Exactly.
Yeah, sent to Guantanamo at this point. Like that's a joke, but not at all a joke, because that's literally what they're doing.
Happening.
So.
Mm-hmm. And I don't know if it's something that we want to get into right now, but I just wanted to mention something that I've been seeing a lot is just this administration and everything that they've been doing to sort of beat down on access to education, and how the administration allowing ICE on schools, and how the recent in the past 24 hours the cuts to the Department of Education and all of that.
As J.D. Vance said back in 2020, I believe, for his run for senator, the professors are the enemy of the people, and unfortunately, we have seen such rhetoric echoed throughout the current administration.
We have an update on the Student Senate. They are about to pass a motion to urge the Institute to publicly commit to only comply with directives, investigations, and presence of Immigration and Customs Enforcement personnel when provided with legally valid judicial warrants and subpoenas. And should an administrative warrant be presented, only comply with directives, investigations, and presence if the administrative warrant is legally compulsory, which is all that we were asking. To expand the advisory and support services offered by the ISSS, and explain how students may receive answers to legal questions related to immigration concerns. Again, we would rather that expansion. We would hope that expansion would include free legal services. That would be the ideal situation, but that is not exactly what this resolution says. To educate the student body on all applicable constitutional and civil rights and interactions with immigration enforcement, including but not limited to protection against self-incrimination, legal representation, freedom from unlawful detention and discrimination, and the right to due process, and provide education and training to staff, including the Department of Public Safety, about how to respond to ICE personnel and ensure that there are legally valid warrants and subpoenas before any investigation of students, faculty, and staff occurs on campus. I think this is excellent. I am glad that this is being passed by the Student Senate. I hope that the administration looks at this and looks at our petition and decides that they need to issue clearer and hopefully put clearer policies, and policies that are hopefully in line with what the student body says, with what the student body as of now has overwhelmingly said. Both our elected student officials and more than 10% of the student body signing this petition within 2 days.
Exactly. Yeah, that's very good. So maybe this is asking about opinions on the Student Senate, but is it often that when the Student Senate does some kind of resolution like this, urging the administration to do something, does that often come to pass, or is it What's the track record on that from your guys' opinion?
I don't have an exact figure on what percentage go through.
Yeah.
We hope for the best with it. Otherwise, we are still aiming to continue our efforts. We are glad to meet with the president of the school or any administrative figure that wishes to further discuss this. We believe it is in the best interests of the faculty, of the students, of the administration of the university that they go forth with these actions. And we intend on showing how many other people agree with such claims.
We in addition to that, I would like to say just how glad I am that the student body has come out to support this in such numbers. I mean, I think that this shows a lot about how much RPI students and the people here care about their fellow students, how much they care about international students, immigrant students, undocumented students, and I think that's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, I think one thing that is amazing about RPI, in my opinion, is that, like, compared to a lot of other schools, it's not a competition here. No one gains anything from another student not being here.
Exactly.
And there is no reason for anyone on campus to want that to happen.
Yeah.
Exactly.
We have a lot to lose if we were
Yeah.
to lose those people. I mean, the amount of researchers we have on campus that are doing a lot of work that makes the school so great are international. And we would hate to see in the future their rights be rescinded in certain ways. An executive order has already threatened those who are here on J1 and F1 visas, I believe. And that's not good. We should do our best to thwart any action that would hurt those people, as it's what makes RPI the great school it is.
Yeah. I hope that the administration can listen to our concerns. I hope that they can take them into consideration, and I hope that they are willing to open a dialogue with YDSA. I hope that they're willing to open a dialogue with the students who signed on the petition and the student body as a whole in order to make these policies a reality.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
Yeah, can I ask those two visas that you mentioned, were those student visas? Gotcha.
Yes, those F1. So there are three types of student. I'm sure that there are others, but there are three primary types of student visas: M, J, and F visas. M1 and F1 are the most. F1 is usually the most common. M1 and J1 are also fairly common.
Gotcha.
I don't know what the difference is, so don't ask me.
Gotcha. Very interesting.
One of them is more for employees. I know that much.
But RPI is required to track M1 and F1 visa applicants and owners through what's called SEVIS, SEVIS, which is through the Department of Education. Our petition does ask that RPI not gather or disseminate information about immigration status. When we talk about immigration status, these things like F1 visas, these things like M1 visas, that's not specifically what we're talking about. Those are non-immigrant visas. Yes, I guess those are technically immigration status, but generally what we mean is we want to make sure that RPI is not collecting information about, is this student a refugee? Is this student undocumented? Is this student on DACA? Is this student on TPS? And disseminating that information. Dr. Schmidt said in his email that all of the students here at RPI all of the international students here at RPI have valid student visas, but that's not really possible for him to confirm because DACA students are not here on valid student visas, and they are able to go to school within the United States. TPS recipients are not necessarily here on valid student visas, and they are able to go to school within the United States. And RPI would not necessarily know or keep track of. They might know at one point, but I think that's on applications. But they might know at one point, but we would ask that they not track that information except for what they are legally required to disclose.
Yeah, and also that's referring to international students. Then there are also national students who might have moved to America and have lived in America all their life, but only came here when they were
Exactly, and it's important to note that if you are a citizen, um, you are not necessarily safe when it comes to this. We have already seen, not on college campuses, thank God, we have already seen instances where ICE has performed raids and has detained legal United States citizens as well as those that they were targeting, has put those people in jail, has kept those people away from where they were. It You being a citizen, you being here legally, does not make you safe, does not inure you from ICE, does not inure you from anything else.
Exactly. There was a story, I think it was a week ago or something like that, where there was these, I think a family of three or something like that from Puerto Rico, which, if you did not know, is a part of America. They are American citizens, were detained by ICE. And they were a good thing they had their their I don't know, ID, their licenses, or whatever kind of identification on them to show like, hey, yeah, we are like citizens, legal, we have our papers and stuff because we're literally U.S. citizens and stuff. But it was, I don't know, they might have been speaking Spanish or something, so someone was like, oh, call ICE, like stupid stuff like that. So, yeah, it affects everyone, even if you are, an American citizen. So,
Yeah. Some stats that I have. There are 250 or an estimated 250,000 undocumented students in the United States higher education system. Even if a small fraction of those are located on RPI's campus, we hope that RPI would like to show the bravery of being leaders in helping other schools go down similar paths. So that way, as many of those 250,000 can be protected as possible. Additionally, when it comes to raids, we've already seen that U.S. citizens have been detained, DACA recipients have been detained. Additionally, um, NBC had reported that more than half have no criminal record. This is what is referred to as a dragnet operation. With an administrative warrant, they are able to enter a space if given permission, they being ICE, and then they will tend to arrest as many people in the space as possible, ask questions later. This is where you run into issues where what if you don't have your papers on you today and you get stopped? I mean, these are very scary scenarios. These are things that students and faculty on our campus are fearing, and we hope that RPI would aim to want to step in the way of them and their fears there.
This is why it's so important that RPI make sure that people who are on campus, that ICE officials who are on campus, are here with the correct legal judicial warrant, and that they are here to get the specific person in the warrant or search for the specific person in the warrant, and only do what is said in the warrant. That is why this is so important. That is why we think that this is something that RPI should be implementing into policy. Um, it would be something that would be awful, and both that would be awful, and also that RPI would be complicit in if students were caught in dragnet operations like this, that were not the original targets, that were not here doing anything illegal, that had never committed a crime, simply because they looked Mexican or they looked Chinese, or like that would be exactly opposite to the ethos of RPI, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And that is why I think that RPI needs to be clear and needs to be precise about exactly what we will and will not allow ICE officials to do, and why that needs to only extend to the extent of their legal ability to do things.
exactly. And I think, as we were alluding to earlier, saying directly earlier that the reason why they haven't, come out in strong support of this, at least hopefully yet, is because they're afraid of, some kind of kickback from the federal government, or some kind of punishment for not complying and stuff like that. But there's no way to both comply with the federal government when they're doing these terrible things, having ICE go around and raid all these different places and stuff, and also provide a supportive environment and vibrant supportive environment for students and anyone doing research and faculty and stuff like that, and offering a safe space for everyone and stuff. That's you can't do both. That's not possible.
Yeah.
And it'd be nice for them, as we've said, to have a backbone and say, okay, we're gonna stand up for what we think is right, and not take anything from the federal government, who is in the wrong in doing these things.
Yeah. And I do, to a certain extent, understand why the term sanctuary campus and the idea of calling ourselves a sanctuary campus might come off as politically charged or as politically loaded. I understand why they're hesitant to call themselves that. I understand why they're hesitant to adopt that designation. But I both want to say that we can be a sanctuary campus without officially adopting that designation, and also that if we do officially adopt that designation, which I think we should, that is not the attention that we get from that is not necessarily only negative attention. If we adopt that label, if we make it clear to international students that they are safe here, if we make it clear to people that they are safe at RPI, that RPI is somewhere that they can come, where we will do our level best to keep them safe, if we do that, that is a huge recruiting boon for RPI. That tells prospective students, that tells prospective faculty, that tells people that are looking at RPI that RPI is somewhere that they can be safe.
Yeah, didn't you mention that there were one or two prospective students that signed the petition?
Yes, we. I don't think I actually added them to the signatures because I didn't have a section to put them in, but we did get a signature from a prospective student. So this, I think that when people look at a school, they want to know whether or not they can be safe at that school. RPI will have a reputation as an incredible engineering school, whether or not it is a sanctuary campus. Being a sanctuary campus will not make anybody not apply that was already intending to apply. It will not make any faculty members not want to work here that were not already not intending to work here, because that's not important enough to make that decision into negative. However, it could certainly make a brilliant faculty member from abroad look at RPI as an institution that they are safe to come to. It could certainly make a brilliant international student look at RPI as an institution that they can safely apply to, that they can come to and be sure that they will not have to worry about crossing the wrong side of the federal government for their 4 years here. It can certainly make a PhD student say, there's where I want to go to school, there's where I know that they will at least try to keep me safe. And I think that is the most important, not the most important perhaps, the policies are the most important part, but I think that is a part that cannot be overlooked. I understand why.
And that can't happen without the policies.
Exactly. That cannot happen without the policies, but that also requires that we are proud about our policies, that we say, yes, we are a sanctuary campus. That if those policies happen, that requires that we stand up and say, yes, we are proud of this. We think that our students should be safe on our campus. And that's why even though I understand why the term sanctuary campus is politically loaded, even though I understand why people are worried about retaliation, I would still urge them to adopt what we have pushed for in our petition in full.
Yeah, I think that covers it pretty well. I think we had an excellent conversation last hour. Does anybody have any parting thoughts or comments on anything?
I'll share the link once more. It is linktr.ee/RPI sanctuary.
Yes, and you can also, if you go to the RPI YDSA Instagram page, you can find the link on there in their bio if you are a listener who would like to sign. And I will add as well that you can sign it if you are a faculty, staff, or administrator of RPI, a student, or there's a section for community folks. So if you're someone who doesn't go here but likes the thought, or if you're an alumni as well, there's an alumni section as well. You can also sign the petition.
And I don't know if there are, when meetings for YDSA are, if for any students who may want to attend them.
YDSA meets at 5 p.m. on Tuesdays.
Yeah. So, I was seeing earlier, you said there was over 900 students who signed it. I was counting earlier, there's about 33 administrators, faculty, and staff who have signed it. And I believe there's more than 8. There's like 10 or so student organizations who have signed the petition as well.
And I guess as of now, the student, what was it, student council, or was it the student senate is
they-
now also,
They have not signed the petition, but
they are in support.
yes,
of.
they have passed a resolution that is in support of many of the same things that we wish to see on campus.
Exactly. So, yeah, thank you to the folks from the RPI YDSA chapter for coming on and talking about this very cool thing. And once again, I'll remind everybody that you're listening to WRPI Troy, the Upstate Underground. And I'll give one last disclaimer here. Everything that we said the last hour was the opinions of those in the room right now, the DJs on air, not of the RPI as a whole, WRPI, or the Board of Trustees, the President of Troy, the President of RPI, the Mayor of Troy. I've said that twice wrong. I need to write this down somewhere. I could click the thing that's recorded, but I don't feel like doing that. I like saying it myself. So keep that in mind. Thank you for joining us.